What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Something to Talk About, the show where we don't dodge the hard conversation, we lean into them. So today's topic, it's got people fired up on both sides. We are talking about second chances, accountability, and whether Maryland just made a bold move or a dangerous one. So here's the headline. After decades of tough on crime policies, long sentences, mandatory minimums, and a system built on punishment, so they say, Maryland is shifting direction. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. There is going to be some points where I'm going to go off script on this one, but bear with me because I got to tell it like it is. So how did we get here? During the 2025 legislative session, the Maryland General Assembly passed what's called the Second Look Act, known as House Bill 853. Do not take my word for it. Look it up for yourself. And here is the core idea. Please comment if you feel like I got it wrong, but I think I'm on the money. If you were convicted of a crime and doesn't specify what kind, it just says if you were convicted of a crime between the ages of 18 and 24, you can now petition the court for a reduced sentence after serving a significant amount of time. In other words, depending on how much time you did, you could be walking free. And let me say this again. People who were once locked away for decades now have a pathway to ask for a second look. Here's the interesting part in all of this. Even though you have the ability to ask, it's not a guarantee. It is specifically a chance. Now, some of y'all might be asking, Keon, why now? And I'll be honest with you. Why would the system, after being so hard for so long, suddenly ease up? Well, to be truthful with you, it just simply comes down to science. We now understand something that we did not acknowledge back in the 80s and 90s, the brain, okay? And especially decision making and impulse control. They're saying that it's not fully developed till around the age of 25. So when you're locked up at 18 years old, when you lock up an 18-year-old and throwing away the key, you're not locking up a finished product, is the concept behind this motion and bill. So when you're locking up an 18-year-old and throwing away the key, you're locking up potential. Okay? You're locking up somebody who may not even fully understand the weight of their decisions yet. I got some theories about that, but let's move on. And that's where this movement is coming from, the idea that people can change. So let's not sugarcoat this, because there's another side to this conversation and it deserves to be heard. And I'm going to be truthful with you. Something to talk about is on the fence about this, because look at what is going on in Baltimore City now with 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds doing heinous grown folk crime. So this is the part that kind of needs to be heard as well. People are out here saying, hold on, what about the victims? Okay, what about the families who lost loved ones? And I've had to stare in some of those families' faces. What about accountability? And those are real questions, because when someone commits violent crime, whether they're 19 or 29, no offense, the damage is permanent. Okay, whether your mind is mature or not. So the concern is, does giving somebody a second chance minimize the seriousness and the heinousness of their crime? Does it minimize the seriousness of what they did? Or worse, does it put communities at risk, hear this now, of the wrong people getting released? All right, this is tension. That's the part nobody can ignore. Now, let's be clear. This isn't a get out of jail free card. The Second Look Act does not automatically release anybody. It is simply the right to petition a judge for an individual in the guidelines of the bill. And that judge has to consider multiple factors, okay? First off, the nature of the crime. And then you got to look at the person's behavior while incarcerated, evidence of rehabilitation, and input from victims and their families. So this isn't emotional decision making, which is good. It's supposed to be a structured legal review. But here's the real question that we have. Do we trust the system? Look at what we got going on now. Come here, Ivan Bates, Brandon Scott, Wes Moore. Do we trust the system to get that decision right? Because the same system that handed down those lengthy sentences in the first place has all of a sudden flipped the script, and now one is being asked to they're asked to reconsider it. Like, it was hard to even say. And this isn't just about Maryland. Let me just be truthful. This is a shift that's happening across the United States of America. We got a heck of a political climate going on when it comes to crime, illegal aliens, juvenile crime statistics are through the roof, and states are starting to reevaluate what justice really means. The problem is, how do we trust them to get it right? Is it punishment? Is it rehabilitation? Or is jail, prison, whatever, something in between? Now, here's a shocking truth. Locking up people longer isn't always making communities safer. I mean, I think we can admit that. Okay. But at the same time, releasing the wrong person can have consequences that nobody wants to deal with. And now that you have Second Amendment right folks up here, and they are pressing the issue of Second Amendment, constitutional carry, and all kinds of other things to go nationwide, this is not brackish water anymore. It's now mud. It's sticky, and we're stuck in this space where there are no easy answers because people are not going to be playing anymore. So let me keep it real with you. This conversation hits different depending on where you stand. If you've been a victim, you might feel like this is a slap in the face. If you've made mistakes in your past, you might see this as hope. That's an interesting concept. If you're just watching this from the outside, you're probably asking the same doggone question that I am. Where do we draw the line between justice and mercy? Because the Bible talks about both. I mean, let's face it. Just because you are forgiven doesn't mean that you are absolved of the consequences of your actions. Sometimes you are, but I mean, the reality is you got to face them. You just face them a little bit easier because you got a relationship with Jesus. Because too much of one without the other creates an imbalance. And as you know, God is about balance. That's why we got the Trinity. It's easier to balance a triangle than it is to balance 2 points. Get my point? So I'll leave you with this. Is Maryland leading the way toward a more fair system? Or are we opening the door to something that we might ultimately regret? And that is the conversation. That is something to talk about. And if you got thoughts on this, I want to hear from them. Drop a comment in this episode, share this episode, and keep the dialogue going, because I definitely will revisit this as time goes on. And I want to have a couple of people on to even talk about this, because whether you agree or disagree, this isn't just policy. This is people's lives. If you want to hear the Christian version of this, make sure you go on over to the New Pentecost Experience. Just look that up. There's a link at the bottom of this, because it gives an even deeper perspective from those who are believers in Christ and how we should be looking at them from that perspective. However, you're going to notice that there's a lot of things that are being said here for the just straight public that, are relatively the same. God is a God about second chances, U-turns, and all of that. He's, you're always pregnant with possibility in the eyes of God. But at the same time, we're going to talk about some consequences that come with that. This is Keon. This is something to talk about. And guess what? I'm out. See you on the next episode.